Kim Kardashian West returned to the White House this week. The reality star discussed prison reform with a group that included presidential advisors Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner.
The meeting took place just months after Kardashian's last visit, when she met with the president in the Oval Office and successfully lobbied to get Alice Johnson a commutation. Johnson had served 21 years in prison after getting a life sentence for drug-related charges.
Joining us now is Mark Osler, former federal prosecutor and law professor at the University of St. Thomas, who was in that meeting with Kim Kardashian. What was that meeting about? Why did it happen? What was it trying to achieve?
The meeting was, they billed it as a listening session. It was about clemency reform, and specifically the problems with the clemency process for the tens of thousands of people in prison, many of whom have petitions pending for clemency. That hasn't worked for the past several administrations the way it should. That was what the meeting was about.
How did it go? I mean, this is a big issue for Jared Kushner. He spent a lot of time on it thus far. How committed are they? And beyond Jared Kushner, what about the rest of the administration? You think there'll be more progress?
I certainly hope so. And I can tell you that Jared Kushner is very engaged with this specific issue, seems to have a good understanding of it. And having that meeting was a really good idea. A lot of people paid attention to the fact that Kim Kardashian was there. It makes sense, in a way, to have people with facts, people with fame, and people with power sit in the same room and talk about an important subject like this. I can write a law review article about clemency reform, but if that's all I do, I may as well throw it in a hole and throw dirt on top of it. But having someone
read those things, just so you know.
Well, that's good, but most people don't. But if Kim Kardashian tweets out the idea, people may read the article, and at the very least, they'll start thinking about this subject, which is really important.
No, there's no kidding. For people who criticize the Kardashians, this is a good road to go down. There was a judge in here, just to illustrate what this issue is about. There was a judge, his name was Kevin Sharp. He was in the meeting as well. Yep. A few years ago, he sentenced a man named Chris Young to life in prison at the age of 26 years old for drug-related charges. Now, Sharp has since said that Chris should be released because keeping him in prison serves no other purpose than revenge. Is this something that people have come around to? Are there people who really took strong positions on drugs in the past who are saying, look, it just doesn't serve the purpose necessary to throw these people in jail for the rest of their lives?
Yes, and that's something that we're hearing from a lot of people. I mean, that's my position. I was a federal prosecutor in Detroit. I, in fact, picked up cases from Jennifer Granholm, and when I left some with Barb McQuaid. And I did a lot of drug cases, and we sought sentences that were too long, that didn't solve a problem. And that is proven to be deeply tragic for a lot of individuals and for society as a whole. And one of the things that was striking about this meeting and really encouraging is it was an oasis of bipartisanship. You had people from very different political backgrounds sitting and talking in a very serious way about solving this problem, and particularly resuscitating this tool, this constitutional tool of clemency.
And bipartisanship is what so many people actually voted for. Someone who wasn't in the room, who people are often concerned is not on board on this topic, is Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Is that a big deal?
It could be. It depends. Although the kinds of changes that are necessary can be done without the Department of Justice. And in fact, a lot of the reforms that certainly I have pushed for, and others have as well, involve moving the process out of the Department of Justice because of the natural conflict of interest that exists when you have the very body that imprisoned people being the ones to decide whether or not that sentence they sought was a mistake.
Interesting. Mark, great conversation. Thank you for being with us. Mark Osler is a former federal prosecutor. This is a good topic. I mean, in a lot of jurisdictions, they're even moving nonviolent drug offenses into a different court system where they're saying, look, let's not treat it like criminal activity. Let's treat it like something else. Look, you know, there's a lot of research to be done on this, and there's a lot of thought to be given to it, but we do fill our jails in many cases with people who are in for drug offenses where there might be a better solution.
Well, there might be a better solution, and this is a topic that doesn't have a huge amount of lobbying dollars behind it.
Yeah, because prisoners don't have
correct. So it has to have thought and commitment, and it's good to see some progress being made.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos. here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.